We're back with Sofa Sermons. Hello, I found a chance to record, so I'm doing it, and here we go. I promised you today that I would tell you a little bit about my story after becoming a Christian, so the last 5 years, and so I'm going to do that for you here today. Excited! So when I became a Christian, the most difficult thing for me after that was telling my parents, and I put it off and I put it off and I put it off, but eventually I did tell them, and it was definitely the right thing to do. It allowed me to go to church and just really start my journey with Christianity. So yeah, anyone in that position, it's not as scary as it sounds, and in the end, it's a much better decision to tell your parents and actually get yourself to church than to put it off. No, I was very lucky. God put me in some very good places very early on. My first job was a waiter in a Christian cafe on a Saturday morning. I used to do 9:15 till 1:15. So every Saturday morning I was surrounded by Christians. And it just kept me interested, kept me involved. So that was really great. Another thing is, when I started going to church, I started going at the same time as another guy that was in my year at school. At the same time, he'd also become a Christian just before me, 4 or 5 months, and so we were new to church, and we both went together. And since then, he's been a very, very close friend of mine, and so I've always had him as a friend. That he became Christian at the same time. We're at a very similar stage in our journey, and it's been really, really helpful to kind of have that. So when I became a Christian, I was really, really excited, really believing everything wholeheartedly. Really awesome way to live, and God did a lot of things in my life in the first year and a half that I was a Christian. So that was really awesome, but things eventually start kind of trailing off, and they did for me, and I wasn't seeing so much amazing things happening. Prayers were going seemingly unanswered. I kind of realised that the attitude of some of the Christians around me, a lot of the Christians around me, was that they weren't as expectant to see God move as I had been in the first year and a half. And when you slip into that kind of mindset, then that's what ends up happening. God just doesn't move because you're not expecting him to. So it's almost like you're not giving him permission to do so. So he didn't, and I found that very difficult. And I remember saying to my youth pastor at the time, I felt quite directionless, and I felt as though I knew I'd been called by God, but I was like, where's this prophecy over my life saying, this is what's going to happen? So I hadn't had anything like that, and why should I have done, quite frankly? But just after saying that, a week after that, I had quite a few words from God in my life from other people. So first of all, I went to this event. There's this event called Soul Survivor in England. It's like a camp, basically. It's a Christian camp, faith camp. But they also run Saturday celebrations at their big church. It's like a warehouse in Watford, which is in North London. And I was there at one of the celebrations, and I was just, I was worshipping. I was going crazy for God, really, and sort of mid worship, the pastor of that church, he came over to me, and he said he felt as though he had a word from God for me, which was encouraging, because seeing as I just asked for one. And so he walks up to me, and he just says, I feel that God's asking me to pray for you, and that he's going to speak to you through me. And he just prayed, and he felt as though God was going to use me in different ways in my life. To be honest, I'm terrible at remembering this word. The only thing I remember from what he said, and this is, if you take one bit of advice from me today, I suggest you write down or you record when someone has a word from God for you, because forgetting is it's just terrible. It's upsetting. God's spoken to you. The Almighty God in heaven has spoken to you, and you can't remember what He said because you didn't write it down. We don't have perfect memories. You can't expect to remember everything. But anyway, He said, as far as I can remember, He said, God's going to use me in different ways. He's going to build me up or something like that. That very same service, someone who was worshipping behind me came over to me, puts a hand on my back and just said, you're right, I feel God's telling me he's got a word for you. Another word, woo! So he said to me that he felt as though I was going through a difficult time, which I was. My parents had separated. It wasn't going well at home, so I was finding that difficult, and I'd just been diagnosed with depression, which is not a great. It's not fun. It's not a nice thing to live with, and so we got that right. I was going through a difficult time, and then he said to me, "I feel as though things are going to get a little bit worse." Not particularly encouraging, but then they're going to get a lot better, and God is just going to surround you with His love. And so that was pretty encouraging. And you know what? They did get worse for a bit at least. So so that bit was right. And you know what? I wouldn't say things are completely better yet. So I'm just trusting God. I'm trusting that word still over my life. It was probably 3 years ago, maybe 4. But God's true to His word, and I will have that solid, loving relationship with God, where I just lose all that negativity again, and that will happen. And then that week, on the Sunday, at church, we had a guest preacher from South Africa over, whose name is Brett. And we were just worshipping. Actually, no, it was the Saturday. Sorry, tell a lie. It was the Saturday night. We had a Saturday celebration. It must have been the Saturday after then. And then after that period of worship, Brett just said, he was preaching, and he just said it kind of somewhere in his sermon. I don't remember why. It was quite odd. He kind of just points to me and just says, "There's something great for you in your life. God's going to do something great in your life. I don't know what it is yet." Well, that's helpful. Could have done with some more specifics there, but if God doesn't want to give me that, that's fine. So God really spoke to me in that week, quite tangibly, which was awesome, pretty awesome. Since then, I've walked close with God, and I've walked far from God. I've been to church every week, but that's no measure of how your relationship with God is, as I'm sure most of you know. There have been nights in the past where I was going out and I was drinking too much, and it was almost like kind of testing God. When you lose that relationship, when you lose that faith that God is true to His word, He's got your back, then I was almost testing Him, like, what difference does it make if I do this? And only bad things come of it, and just take my word for it, really. And you'll know if you've gone that route, it's nothing good comes from that sort of thing. I mean, equally, there have been other times in that period of time where, the easy thing would have been to go out and have fun, get drunk, do whatever, and you've got to be the person to say, I'm not coming, and it's no fun sometimes, and it's lonely sometimes, but it's the right thing to do. And every time I've made that decision, and it's my standard decision now. You'll be happy to know if I'm offered sin cake or sin pie, as I'm going to call it. Standard reaction is I'm good, actually, thanks. It's not always the social decision, and sometimes it does leave you lonely, but it's the better decision to make, and people will respect you for it whether you see them doing it or not. And then I went to university in London, studying neuroscience, and I did a year, and it was a horrible year. I just had a horrible time. And the reason really was because I didn't know why I was there. I didn't know why I was going. I just went because I felt like it was the right thing to do. I got into a very good course, and it just seemed logical to kind of do it. But then I didn't make any close friends, and here's another thing you should learn from me. I didn't really take an active role in the Christian Union. What I did do was go to church every week, but that wasn't the same. The church I went to was older than my age as an average. I mean, not much older, we're talking like late 20s. But the problem was that, you know, a lot of my friends had like wives and stuff. And they just had quite different lives to me. And they wouldn't have the same social schedule as I would. And, you know, they had a wife to go back to. At the end of the day, it was different. And I didn't meet anyone really. I genuinely don't think I have one close friend from university. Definitely not a male one. And the reason is because I didn't go to the Christian Union, and everyone that I came into contact with was out drinking every night or whatever, and didn't go clubbing once the whole time I was at university. And, you know, my course wasn't enough something that I felt called to do, something I was meant to do, for me to stay. So I dropped out, became a waiter, which was a little bit of a step down, and I found it incredibly stressful, and I had to work Sunday morning sometimes, which was an absolute nightmare as well. And I found myself in these difficult places where I just wasn't satisfied. I wasn't fulfilling any giftings at all. I was just kind of making my way, and in some ways that's still where I am at the moment. I'm trusting God to give me that next step. My kind of Christian support groups are firmly in place at the moment, and whilst everything's not great and peachy in my life, it's a lot better than it could have been. It's a lot better than it was, and I guarantee that my relationship with God and kind of keeping up with that has been a huge part of the steps that I've taken to kind of get into the place where I am now, where I feel as though I'm starting to get back that sense of direction that I lost. And you know, if you're in that place, then the absolute best thing you can do is pray, find Christian friends, go out with them, and just keep those influences in your life, because they are literally the things that keep you going. And, you know, even in this video, I'll watch it back, and it will be a case of, you know, take your own advice, Lewis, because we don't, you know, well, I can't speak for you, but I'm not always trying my best to do everything for Christ, and I know it's the best way to live, because I've done both, and there's only one way that works. So yeah, that's just a snippet of my story, really. At some stage I will run a question and answer, so it'll be some questions about me if people actually want to know things about me, and then just like normal questions, like questions about Christianity. So if people are struggling with a certain thing and they want advice, or if they want my opinion on how to take a certain scripture. But yeah, I hope you took something from my story, and I hope you have an excellent day. Bye bye.